What is up, my ducks and drakes? Welcome to the Carter Lake, and today we're reading chapters 7 and 8 of Bad Moon Rising, a Senior-Sides fanfic by Bekka911. If you'd like to support the fic or the author, which I recommend you do both of those links will be in the description below. There's also a link to a Google form where you can recommend fics for the future. This is the last book in this series, and we're getting close to the ending, and so any recs would be greatly appreciated. Any site, any author, any fandom, I don't care. With that being said, let's move into Bad Moon Rising, Chapter 7. Deceit was not himself, and yet he was. Remus watched him through narrowed eyes, mouth pinched. He needed to be sure, needed to watch for just a little longer before he vocalized his suspicions, but the signs were all there. You'd have to be blind not to see them. Remus wasn't blind. He got the better eyesight out of the family, or maybe he was less of an idiot than his twin brother. Deceit met his eyes, cocking an eyebrow and tilting his head, smiling sharply. Remus hated the fact that chills ran across his skin. This Deceit was dangerous. "See something you like, my dear old Duke?" Deceit's voice was like a purr, low and smooth and oh so soft and gentle. Dangerous. Remus's lips curled into a crazy grin, and he let the glaze of childish insanity cloud the fact that he knew. "Just wondering," he said lazily, and Deceit's eyes flickered away for a moment. There. The Deceit that Remus knew would never be back down over nothing. This wasn't his Deceit. "Perhaps we should rebuild the wall?" A test. It was a test. A challenge. A trial. Deceit should pass with flying colors. Remus knew that, and yet whoever this was startled, mouth pinching into a tight line and betrayed his emotion-fueled reaction. No. Not Deceit hissed sharply, baring his teeth. Remus wrinkled his nose. Deceit had never been this unrefined. "The wall stays down. Virgil comes back." Now that was interesting. Virgil. Why would Deceit be so focused on Virgil now, of all times? The wall had just been shattered. They should all be overwhelmed by their returned energies. Of course, Remus had cheated all those years ago, so he was far from affected, but Deceit should have forgotten about this obsessive project to bring back Virgil, if only for a moment. "What sort of effect do you think this whole situation is having on our old little buddy?" Remus mused out loud, tracking not Deceit's subtle reactions. "After all, his energy should have returned to him. Maybe sudden fluctuation of light-dark balance will send dearest morality off track." Remus's grin suddenly went razor-sharp. "Perhaps, dearest Snake, you have been affected most of all." Not Deceit's hands twitched at his sides. Remus's eyes, the movement keenly. "I am fine," Not Deceit growled lowly. Deceit had never growled like that before. Low and guttural and ugly. This thing, whoever or whatever it was not Deceit. Remus was sure now. There was something too off. Too different. This was not Deceit. Remus hummed knowingly, turning away from the imposter with a sly grin. Perhaps this could work in his favor. All he had to do was exploit not Deceit's weakness, fluctuating personality. Maybe, if Remus used enough of his energy, he could take control of the puppet strings. Maybe he could finally get Deceit to help him ruin the pathetic excuse for creativity that Thomas so adored. "You see me," a voice breathed into his ear, and Remus stiffened, flicking his eyes around in an attempt to see who was speaking. His gaze snagged on not Deceit, who was staring blankly at the ground, with his mouth hanging open. "I do see you." "You're the one pretending to be Deceit," Remus said quietly, and the air around him rippled. Dark amusement brushed against his thoughts. You're clever. Perhaps I should have chosen you over the snake. I don't know. Snakes have a way of pleasing everyone. More amusement. Remus was sure he could also detect a hint of exacerbation. Good. I want Virgil back, the strange voice admitted in a hissing sort of whisper. I need him. His energy. Deceit failed to deliver. Will you fail me too? I wonder. Remus cackled, short and sharp and deranged. Why would I do anything for you? He asked loudly. I don't know you. I probably have more power than you. Cold gripped the back of his neck. It crept down his spine like ice. His veins froze. His breath rattled in his chest. He could taste snow on his tongue. He squeaked slightly, weapon dropping to the ground. Not Deceit slowly lifted his head, smile too wide to be natural. There were entirely too many teeth. Remus did not get afraid, but he was afraid now. You will return Virgil to me, the voice wheezed. I will return Deceit's consciousness so that he may help you. If you fail, I will claim your spirit too, and then I will tear Thomas's mind to shreds. Do you wish that upon your host, dearest Remus? No. No, he didn't. Remus lived to create chaos, that was true, but he loved his hosts. Thomas was good. Thomas was still young. Thomas was naive and stupid and strong-willed and caring, and Remus would not let him be ruined by some cheap-ass horror movie nobody. I trust that once I brought Virgil back to the group, you'll tell me the specifics of where I am to return him to? Remus bit down on nothing as cold evaporated from his body. I see that it is done, Remus. Deceit's body jolted once before going limp, and Remus watched through blurry eyes as shadows streamed and twirled and Deceit's face slackened. Somewhere in the distance, a voice laughed and a clock ticked. Thomas stared down at his phone, feeling sick to his stomach. His hands shook. His breath caught in his throat. Tears bubbled somewhere at the back of his eyes. He didn't. He couldn't. He dropped his device, legs giving out on him. He sat on the couch and buried his hands in his hair, trying his best to breathe through the sudden and unnecessary panic. This wasn't Virgil-induced. He knew that. He knew it. He knew it. What was happening? His phone buzzed. Responses to what he'd just done. What he didn't do. Remember doing. He had to go. He had to go now. He leapt off the couch and fled out to the front door, his breathing still too shallow, his thoughts too wild and scrambled. His phone lay on the floor, abandoned. On it, a single tweet that didn't make any sense. Tick-tock. The clock on the wall kept the time, each tick of the seconds, hand clanging like a bell that warmed to death. Tick-tock. 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 Chapter 8. Deceit lingered in the shadows of Peddin's room and swore to himself that he was only there to terrorize the light side. It wasn't because the air was crisp and light and Deceit was still trembling after having control of himself forcibly ripped away. It wasn't. He just wanted to climb his back to his former glory. He was here to hurt Peddin, not to stop himself from hurting. It was moments like this that Deceit almost ached to have Virgil back. Virgil, who had been by his side for far too many years to just leave him like that. Virgil, who had helped him to build the wall, helped him to contain the true horrors of Thomas's psyche. Virgil, who had been his best friend. Deceit wanted him back. Tick-tock. If you do not remove your presence from my head, I will do everything in my power to ensure that the light sides win this battle. he snarled dangerously as the low voice in his head clicked in time with the passing seconds. It had not left him since Remus challenged the other. Virgil. It all started and ended with Virgil. Deceit was so very tired of chasing after someone who had spent a lifetime running. Virgil wouldn't come back to them. Not willingly. No matter how much Deceit longed for his presence, no matter how much Thomas needed Virgil to come back, he wouldn't. Virgil had torn apart the tapestry that was the dark sides. How could they be expected to be forgiving after that? For the sake of Thomas, Deceit fully intended on not giving Virgil a choice. His brooding was cut short by Patton entering the room, emotions visibly scrambled. Finally, some sort of victory. Deceit seeped into the darkness, allowing his presence to expand and expand until every breath that Patton took was tainted with the horrible bitterness that Deceit radiated. "Go away!" Patton shouted, his voice a mangled mess, a jagged facade and ugly emotion. "You've already poisoned me enough. I do not need you hissing in my ear. You got what you wanted. Leave me be." Oh, Patton. Deceit had gotten everything but what he wanted. Still, he'd won this battle. So Deceit let his breath hiss out of him before he let himself fall backwards, tumbling through the darkness as he fell and fell and fell. The shadows coiled around his arms, pressed down on his wrist, and his pulse leapt and jumped. He closed his eyes and let himself go blank. He would fall and fall and fall, and nobody would break him out of it, because nobody cared what games Deceit was playing. Deceit didn't even care what he was playing anymore. He was just so tired. He missed Virgil. He missed how it was. He wanted Virgil. "Deceit," the voice cooed, deceptiveness in its gentleness. "You have someone waiting for you by the wall. I'd advise you go hurry. Your time is running out." "If you say tick-tock," Deceit said without opening his eyes, "I'm going to remove myself from the situation." He wasn't afraid of fading. The voice fell silent, but he could still feel the residual amusement seep through his thoughts. It wasn't his amusement. It was his emotion. None of it was his. He wasn't himself anymore, his body nothing but a hijacked vessel for some nameless voice that had an obsession with clocks. His dignity had buried away hard and fast, and now Deceit was reduced to a shadow of Remus, feral and desperate and snarling. Ah, of course, it would be Remus that was waiting for him on the wall. Of course it would be Remus who had gotten himself tangled up in this. The other side cold never helped himself when it came to picking the wrong side. This time, he'd chosen Deceit's side. Deceit really didn't know what that said about this whole situation. "Best not keep him waiting," he sighed to the shadows. They squirmed in agreement, twisting around his limbs as they tugged him through an aching, yawning sense of nothing. He would never be able to adjust to his weightless sensation that accompanied his travels through the darkness. It made sense in a way. Everything is the real world was so heavy and tiring. It was only fair that the cool, dark places of Thomas's thoughts were light and fluffy and empty. What Deceit wouldn't give to escape from the darkness? It wasn't possible, of course. Trying would only bring pain and fear. Deceit wouldn't be able to live through that again. But still. Oh, what a wonderful delight. Full thought to entertain. If he ran, if he finally got out, he'd find Virgil, and he'd apologize, and then he'd find Thomas, and he would finally tell his host the truth. That was the first step, wasn't it? The first step to not being a dark side? Break the cycle? Virgil could help him with that. "You're thinking dangerous thoughts again, Deceit," Remus growled from somewhere beyond Deceit's sight. The shadows hadn't cleared enough yet. Don't risk it. We both know how it went last time." Yes. Yes, Remus's warning had merit. For once, Deceit needed to listen to the Duke. After all, it had been Remus who had been forced to turn him over to the others, and it had been Remus that had stripped away Deceit's power before forcing him into the swirling black abyss beyond the wall. Deceit had come back. Changed. And he knew that Remus knew. Deceit's curled lip. You doubt my loyalty so easily. Remus grinned a wicked grin, his face alight with a sharp, untethered glee. Oh, Deceit, he crooned dramatically. Don't think I can't see you through. I know what you think about. I know why you really spend so much time chasing after Virgil after his precious light-side friends. Something cold wrecked nails across the back of Deceit's mind, and he flinched away, feeling his joints lock and his eyes go wide. Remus's manic facade faltered. Do not forget me. Something whispered from the dark remains of the wall. I am here. I am listening. I will come for you both. Deceit scowled down at the shards. Shut up! Remus picked a piece for good measure. Thank you all so much for listening. I really enjoy this series, and you guys being along for the ride here in this final book makes it even more special. I want to very much support this author and everything they do because, my gosh, talented author right away, right here, right now. If you would like to support me, my Etsy is in the description where I make beaded things and I do customs. So if you want some Sandersides beaded things, you could do that. I work very hard on everything I do, or at least try to, so that's one of them. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and, like always, do your best!